everybody, it's Sarah and welcome to day 13 of Bookmas. And today I have another review for you, and that review is of The Burning God by R.F. Kuang, which is the third and final book in the Poppy War series, the first book being the Poppy War and the second book being the Dragon Republic. This is going to be a spoiler-free review, and I will also have like a spoiler-filled vlog up in a week, and then the week after that I will have a video up talking about like my thoughts of the Poppy War series now that I have read all three books, because as some of you might know, I was not the biggest fan of the first two books. I in fact gave the first book 1 star and the second book 2 stars. If you want to know all my thoughts behind that and why I dislike the first two books, then I will leave all the videos that I made on that down below. I made 2 videos on the Poppy War and 2 videos on the Dragon Republic, and so yeah, if you want to know those thoughts, go and check them out. And yeah, but in this book we're going to talk about The Burning God, and why, even though I disliked the first 2 books, I in fact gave The Burning God 4 stars. Because, surprise, I actually really enjoyed this last book, and I am really happy that I stuck with the series and that I kept on reading, because even though I do have very controversial thoughts on the first 2 books, I think overall this series is a game changer within adult high fantasy. And I think the series has a lot of great ideas, even if R.F. Kuang wasn't always the best at executing them. And so yeah, I'm not gonna summarize the series, because if you watch this video you probably already know what this series is about, because no one watches a review for a third book in a series without having read the first 2 books. But let's talk about this, and let's talk about my rating and the positives and the negatives and everything. And for once I kind of want to start with the positives. And as I said, I gave this 4 stars. I think reading enjoyment wise, personally, I would probably have given it more 3.5 stars. But a big reason for that is that I just, because of my problems with the first 2 books, had like not really that much interest in the characters, and I wasn't that invested in the characters, which I think took away some of the reading enjoyment from me. But because my lack of interest in the characters didn't really have anything to do with the characters themselves, aside from Rin, but we'll get to that later, I thought that, like, you know, objectively, this probably really should be a 4-star book. I think if I had been invested in the characters, I would probably have given this 5 stars, even though I do still have my problems with it. So I thought 4 stars is a good compromise. So let's talk about what changed. Why did I give this 4 stars when I disliked the first 2 books so much? And the main reason for that is that R.F. Kuang improved a lot in her writing. And I already talked about that a lot in my Dragon Republic both review and discussion, that I really enjoy and I'm really interested in R.F. Kuang's concepts with this series. However, I thought that the execution of those concepts very often, at least for me, fell flat, which means I did not really enjoy the execution. However, within this book, I felt like the concept and the execution finally came together in a way that made it really enjoyable for me to read. And that was especially the case with our main character, Fang Runen. Rin is probably one of my most hated characters ever. I don't think there are many characters that I have read about that I can stand less. However, Rin is also one of the most interesting and complex characters that I have ever read about. And like, the one thing doesn't take away from the other. However, something that always really bothered me in the first 2 books is that while I felt like the concept for Rin was a character that we're not supposed to root for, I felt like the execution of the character within the text, there were hints still that we should still, you know, root for Rin. And I really had a problem with that. However, within this book, finally the concept of an unlikable character that you're not really supposed to root for came together with the execution of showing us how unhinged Rin really is, and that finally made the reading experience of this series for me really, really enjoyable. And that was like the main reason, the main game changer for me, why I suddenly enjoyed the series, why I suddenly enjoyed following Rin on her story, why I enjoyed following the plot, why I enjoyed and why I wanted to see where it's gonna end. Although that's a lie. I wanted to see where it's gonna end from the very beginning, to be honest. And yeah, that's the thing, because the concepts of this series are amazing. You have the same concepts of the first two books, and so I think if they already worked for you from the very beginning, they're still gonna work for you within this book, obviously. But I also think that the third book can be enjoyable for people who did not enjoy the first two books. And that's something that like really surprised me, because not gonna lie, I did not wanna keep my hopes up exactly. Like, I did not read the third book for any like hate reading reasons. I honestly wanted to see where it ends. I don't hate read books. If I don't want to read a book, I don't read it. But I'm just really pleasantly surprised how much I did end up enjoying this, and how much I also ended up enjoying the ending. It's of course hard to talk about the ending in a non-spoiler way. However, I'm gonna try my best. And what I'm gonna say is that I think the ending might be a bit controversial. And I in fact personally wasn't even the biggest fan of the ending when I first read it. I also, until the last 10 pages, was very skeptical, which you're gonna see in my vlog, if this is gonna end in any way that I can get behind. And then I was like, after I finished it, I was like, yeah, I mean, I guess it's okay. But the more I sat on the ending, the more I was like, yeah, this is really the only way this book and this series could have ended. Because this isn't the story of Nikara, this isn't the story of this war even, this is the story of Fang Runen. And this ending is perfect for the character that Fang Runen is. And so now that it's been a few days since I finished this book, I'm like, yeah, I can really, really appreciate the ending. I might not have enjoyed it that much, but I can really appreciate it. And I think that's the case with a lot of elements overall in this book, where now I can not necessarily enjoy the elements more, but just appreciate them more. And I think I might actually want to reread the series at some point and see if, like, I don't think I'm gonna enjoy the series any more than I did the first time I read it, but I think I can appreciate it more. And that is why my relationship with the series is also so complicated, because I still stand by everything that I said about the first two books. My opinions haven't changed just because of this ending and because I enjoyed this ending, but I still can appreciate certain elements in the first two books more now. Some other positive things: I did enjoy most of the characters in general in this book. Kitai is an amazing character, I think. But again, this series very much is Rin's story, so the other characters don't play that much of a role, to be honest. Once again, I had a call while I was filming. But yeah, the third positive thing that I have once again is just like the grimdark realism of R.F. Kuang. I typically am not the biggest fan of grimdark. I feel like a lot of times within grimdark there's very much unnecessary violence, especially unnecessary violence towards women. However, I don't know why with R.F. Kuang that doesn't bother me that much. Because R.F. Kuang's like scenes and the stuff that happens in her books and that you see a lot of times very much is a lot more violent than anything else I have ever read. But she just manages to just like, you know, write it into her books in a way where it doesn't seem like voyeuristic violence, but just seems to be a realistic depiction of stuff that is usually glorified within fantasy, like wars and etc. So yeah, I just still also really enjoyed that in this third book. And now as for more neutral stuff, like, I don't know. I think I would enjoy the series more if it wasn't the story of Rin. But it is the story of Rin. And because of that, I just feel like sometimes I don't get enough of the other characters, especially of interactions between other characters. Like, I think if this wasn't the story of Rin, but instead of Nikara, of the war, of whatever, I think we would have gotten a few great interactions between Kitai and Neza, but they aren't there, of course, and I understand why they aren't there, because again, it's the story of Rin, but it's just like personal preference where, you know, it's kind of, I understand what it is and why it isn't the way I want it to be, but there's still a little part of me that's like, I kind of really want that to happen though. So yeah, that's kind of my neutral stuff. And now let's go on to the negatives. And I pretty much within this book only have two big negatives. The first of those is Neza. And Neza kind of was already a negative at the end of the Dragon Republic for me. And even more so within this book, where I feel a lot of times Neza's characterization is a bit all over the place, and the things he does more to drive the plot forwards rather than them being actions that he does because of his characteristics and what his character is. And I feel like his actions sometimes are a bit out of character for him. So yeah, I love Neza, he's probably my favorite character in the series, but I also feel like he's the least consistent character within the series, and it's just kind of like, I don't know if I'm a fan of that or not. And then the last big negative thing is something that I want to say with the least amount of spoilers possible. There's a lot of setups within the story that never pay off. Like, there's a setup of a possible spy within the camp, but it never really pays off. There's a setup with Rin's brother that goes nowhere and is never really paid off. There's a setup with a former Spearly character that never really pays off. There's a setup with the former, what's her name, Spearly Queen that never really pays off. And there's just like a lot of those, and none of those setups are important to the plot, so they don't lead to plot holes, like in and of themselves. I mean, one of them might be a bit of a plot hole, but yeah, just not the biggest fan. Just saying, some of those setups maybe even feel like setups just to write possible prequel stories, but yeah. I don't like setups without payoffs, especially obvious setups. Sometimes you can forget about setups, by the end of the story you even forgot that something was set up, but not in this case, so yeah, not the biggest fan of that. But yeah, that was it for my spoiler-free review of The Burning God by R.F. Kuang. I would actually recommend for those of you who did not enjoy the first two books to stick with the series, see if you do end up like me enjoying the third book, because I do think this series as a whole is really worth it. And I can just say, I think for those of you who did really love the first two books, I think you're gonna love this third one as well. I mean, again, I think the ending might be controversial, but I still think the ending is perfect for what the story is, even if it isn't the most enjoyable ending, or like, you know, story-wise the most enjoyable ending. It's not a satisfying ending. Let's say it like that. It's not a satisfying ending. And so yeah, that was it for this video. If you have read The Burning God already, tell me in the comments down below what your thoughts were on it. If you haven't, tell me, do you intend to pick this third book up, and how did you enjoy the first two books? If you enjoyed this video, maybe think about giving me a thumbs up and also maybe subscribing. All the links to my social media are in the description box down below, so go and check those out. Also, all the links to my book club of Queens, Witches and Valkyries, where we read one adult high fantasy book written by a woman per month, will also be linked down below, so go and check those out as well. And I hope I'll see you soon. Bye!